Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We were just waiting for the system to get online. It's important for people to see us at home, the thousands of people watching us tonight. This is, we're meeting for the purpose Capital Budget Subcommittee to discuss capital budget items. We're going to start first with the Maryland School for the Deaf, Emily Haskell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Emily Haskell, and I'm presenting the capital budget analysis for the Maryland School for the Deaf. Starting on page 1, you can see in this chart that there's only one project in the CIP. This is the high school and middle school residences project at the Frederick campus. Fiscal 2024 is the first year of funding. There's $1.9 million provided in general obligation bonds for planning and design. The project consists of the construction of 3 new dormitory buildings, including room for a student and health center, as well as the demolition of existing buildings. The total project costs are estimated at $55.5 million. This is an increase of 84% compared to the prior estimate from the prior year. This increase is due to increased estimates for the cost of demolition, increased square footage for the project, as well as increased escalation and construction contingency allowances. DLS recommends approving the GO bond authorization for the project. Next, I'll turn to some updates on prior funded projects. The Veddets building, this project was scheduled for completion by this May. However, the construction contract has not yet been awarded. Next, the Columbia campus emergency notification system. This received funding in fiscal 2019 and 2021, but the solicitation for bids has not yet been advertised. DLS has asked the Department of General Services to comment on each of these projects on the status, as well as if additional funding is expected to be required. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. I don't see any questions. I'll now turn it over to the agency. Welcome. Good to see you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair Zucker and committee members. I am John Serrano. I'm the superintendent for the Maryland School for the Deaf, and next to me is my chief financial officer and operating officer. Ann Miller is here, and we're here and committed to support and maintain and upkeep our facilities for both of our Frederick and the Columbia campuses. What that means is it will then support our current and future students. So we concur with the analysis, the analyst's recommendation.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Thank you. We'll now move on.
Thank you.
Well, we will now move on to the judiciary. Jacob Polikov. Start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am happy to be here today to share the DLS analysis for the judiciary's capital projects. On the cover page, you will see in the summary several projects. We have the new Courts of Appeal building, the new Harford County District Court, the Washington County District Court renovation and expansion, and the Shulman building conversion. In the fiscal 24 request, the largest project is the new Courts of Appeal building. In fact, that remains the case for the next 3 years, 24, 25, and 26. And we see that other projects start ramping up as we get further into the 5-year CIP. A couple of key observations for you. There have been some delays which have impacted the project schedules for Washington County and the Shulman projects. Multiple delays have impacted the project schedule, and the judiciary should comment on what has caused delays in both projects and whether or not more delays are expected. The judiciary should also comment on the status of the events that have previously caused delays and if the problems resulting from these events have been fully resolved. The new Courts of Appeal building design cost. The design of the new Courts of Appeal building is close to being completed and construction is expected to commence midway through fiscal 24. The judiciary should comment on when the final cost for design of the Courts of Appeal building will be available. In terms of recommended actions, DLS recommends approving all authorizations and pre-authorizations for the judiciary. On page 3, you'll find a discussion of the new Courts of Appeal building. This new building will house the Supreme Court of Maryland, the Appellate Court of Maryland, the Thurgood Marshall State Law Library, and other judiciary units. The projected cost for the new Courts of Appeal facility has increased by more than $60 million in the fiscal 24 CIP over the fiscal 23 estimate. Notably, the amount for fiscal 24 more than doubled, increasing from 21 million to 54 million. A full breakdown of the changes is seen in Exhibit 1 on page 3. The judiciary should comment on when a 50% design estimate will be made available. Additionally, the judiciary should also comment on whether the established budget is sufficient and on any value engineering efforts which have so far been made in this project. Moving to the Harford County District Court. This project involves the construction of a new courthouse in Bel Air for the District Court of Maryland for Harford County. The project includes a number of things, including space, which the current facility cannot accommodate for a number of court functions, including attorney conference rooms, better security, and courtroom vestibules. The judiciary should comment on when the committees will receive notification for this project as required by Section 10.305 of the State Finance and Procurement Article. For the Washington County District Court renovation and expansion, this project involves renovation of the existing courthouse in Hagerstown, including the construction of an addition. Due to the dismissal of the prior design consultant by DGS, completion of this project has been delayed by 1 year. The contract was terminated due to the former consultant's failure to meet its contractual requirements, which delayed the start of construction from July 22 to April 23. Project is now scheduled to be completed in October of 2024 and cost an additional $1.5 million. The judiciary should comment on if the project scope has been finalized and if the amount budgeted will be sufficient to award the construction contract. Finally, we have the Shulman building conversion. This project involves significant changes to the existing courthouse in Baltimore City. Primarily, it involves renovating the building to provide space to include 7 courtrooms, along with modern safety standards and resolutions to a number of maintenance problems. Exhibit 2 on page 7 shows the project CIP changes from the fiscal 21 CIP to 2023. The judiciary should comment on what has caused the delays from the 2021 CIP to present. This project has been delayed several times and is now slated for completion in September 2025. And that concludes my presentation for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Polakov, for that excellent analysis. I don't see any questions. Thank you very much. We'll now bring up the Chief Justice. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm also joined today by the Chief Judge of the District Court of Maryland, John Morrissey. We very much appreciate Mr. Polakov's thorough analysis. As always, we appreciate the attention of this subcommittee and of the committee to the judiciary's needs. We do concur in the analysis and in the recommended actions. We have responded in writing to all of the comments. Since the judiciary relies on DGS for all of our capital needs, the written responses were provided by DGS. We're hoping we might be joined today by a representative of DGS, but that doesn't appear to be the case. So we'd be happy to walk through the documents, but given DGS's ownership of the projects, that's where most of the information resides as well.
Thank you very much. I'll let DGS know you'll meet him in court. No, I'm kidding. I don't see any questions. I think we're up. Senator Quarterman.
Thank you. Appreciate all your help in Washington County. Usually when we talk about Washington County, this committee, I get excited. But obviously this is not so much. So understanding the ES responsibility, anything we can do to help out on that.
Thank you. I pressure them as much as I can, Senator, to try to get this project complete. We need a third judge out there and we can't get it until we get the courtroom done. And they're gonna fix the air conditioning to the HVAC system there when they do that third courtroom, which we desperately need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Jennings.
Thank you. Judge, first of all, thanks. When I reached out to you earlier this year about the Harford County, you were very open and willing to come out. Just question, did Harford County ever reach out to you to talk about a possible site visit or for you to come out and at least talk with them?
Yes, on several different individuals, including the now current county executive I've spoke to on a number of occasions, as well as members from I believe it's the town of Bel Air,
Yes.
Correct? I don't want to get that wrong. Members of that group we've talked to and briefed also.
Okay, thank you, because they were calling concerned and I called you and you were very attentive. So thank you. I just want to make sure they followed up.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Oh, Senator King.
Love to see you in our rooms. Nice to have you here.
Nice to see you again, and thank you for confirming all the district court judges in your other role. So we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I think we have one public witness. Reminder, 2 minutes. Is there a Margaret Carter? Thank you. All right, moving on. We'll now go to the Department of Health, Morgan Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Morgan Smith, and I'm here today to present the capital budget analysis for the Department of Health. We're going to start on page 4. Page 4 outlines the renovation of the Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center in Jessup. This would renovate the 80-bed facility to a maximum security level and construct a new food service center in the maximum security wing. The current request includes $21.7 million in general obligation bonds to fund the remaining design costs and begin construction. The current estimate is based upon the 50% construction document stage in fall 2022. And after much delay, the design phase is expected to be completed in March 2023, at which time a more reliable 95% construction document estimate should be made available. To this end, MDH and the Department of General Services should advise the committees on the availability of the 95% construction document estimate and whether the proposed authorizations and pre-authorizations will be sufficient to award the construction contract in July 2023 as scheduled. On the end of page 5 and onto page 6, there are a discussion of 4 out-year state-owned projects. The only one that has received funding in prior years is the decommissioned building efforts. The other 3, the SET unit, the facility for children and expansion of youth support services, and the behavioral health crisis centers will be receiving funding for the first time in the out years. And I will let you read through these at your leisure. We'll be moving on, starting on page 7, 7 through 12, outline the Community Health Facilities Grant Program. And in Exhibit 3, which is on page 10, it begins the discussion of each individual project, the total cost, the prior authorizations, the authorizations in fiscal 2024, and any future requests. This totals $11 million in fiscal 2024. And then on pages 12 and 13, there's a similar exhibit 4, that walks through the federally qualified health centers grant program, which totals $3.5 million in fiscal 2024. And I will also let you read through those projects at your leisure. And then finally, starting on page 14, there's a discussion about the facility master plan. You may remember that in the 2018 Joint Chairman's Report, MDH was asked to submit a facility master plan And that came through in 2021. This plan was through 2041, and it outlines how the facilities will be changing, including decommissioning of buildings, upgrades, and future projects. All of the facilities were assessed on their functionality, structural status, environmental impacts, and any necessary updates that would improve the quality of care at these facilities. And Exhibit 5 on page 15 shows the facilities, their square footage by rating that was included in the facility master plan. You will see that the current facilities encompass nearly 3.5 million square feet, with about 87% of that square footage being rated average or poor. Only 13% or a little over 445,000 square feet currently operate within limited renovation needs. And then moving to Exhibit 6 on page 16. Exhibit 6 shows two columns, the first column being what the facility master plan outlined initially, and the now column showing what the CIP has been able to address. The green lettering on the right-hand side of the page shows any projects that were accelerated from later phases to closer fiscal years. DLS is concerned about the scope of the facility master plan because of these changes, including whether there were more deferred elements that are coming up or items that are being prioritized newly. So MDH should brief the committees on the department's plan to update the facility master plan in line with the new administration's priorities, especially with respect to moving patients out of state-run facilities and into community-based care and the potential privatization of these hospitals. Lastly, much of the facility master plan is centered around modern models of care, including serving individuals within their communities. Community-based providers, as we know, are the backbone of many services provided throughout the Department of Health, including the behavioral health, developmental disabilities, and Medicaid waiver programs. However, the state has been seeing a decline in the number of direct care professionals while provider rates have continued to struggle to keep up with inflation, and the rising demand on remaining staff continues to grow. To that end, MDH should comment on whether the plan to transition to care to community-based providers is still a priority, including whether an assessment on the capacity of community-based providers to accept an influx of patients has been completed, and how transitioning consumers to private providers will impact state employees. If you jump back to the bottom of page 2 and onto page 3, you'll see the recommendations that were made in this analysis. The first is to approve all proposed general obligation bond authorizations and any proposed pre-authorizations. And then there's a piece of narrative asking MDH to submit an updated facility master plan, which details any changes in priorities or timelines, as well as the plan for continuing to provide patient care when facilities are decommissioned or relocated. And with that, I end my testimony, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for that great analysis. I don't see any questions. We'll call up the agency, Madam Secretary. Good to see you.
Different room.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Zucker and members of the subcommittee. Laura Herrera-Scott, Health Secretary of the Maryland Department of Health, and with me is Brian Morose, Acting Deputy Secretary of Operations, and Will Andalora, who's the Director of MDH's Office of Facilities Management and Development. I want to thank Ms. Smith and the entire DLS budget analyst team, as always, for their analysis. And I want to say before I turn it over to Brian, we're looking forward to continuing the discussions about our state healthcare facilities. And I just started going through the master facilities plan and some of the short-term decisions that need to be made, as well as the longer term. But Brian will go into that in more detail when he reviews our responses. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Good afternoon, Chairman Zucker and members of the subcommittee. I am Brian Morose. I'm the Director of the MDH Healthcare System and the Acting Deputy Secretary of Operations. I wanted to go through each one of those responses individually. So starting with the first one, the renovation of Clifton T. Perkins Hospital North Wing. This is one of our major projects. It's been funded through the capital budget. And as you may know, Clifton T. Perkins is the only state maximum security psychiatric hospital. This construction will renovate the existing North Wing,
which currently houses medium and maximum security patients, to a new maximum security unit. The Office of Facilities Management and Development has been working closely with the Department of General Services and anticipates a 95% construction document to be submitted in late May 2023. The project should also reach design completion and be ready for a bid in early August 2023. Construction is anticipated to begin in early November 2023. As for the other statement or comments about what barriers exist in terms of increasing project load and funding for reasons, concentrating on the new funding in fiscal 24 around community health facilities grant program. The Community Health Facilities Grant Program is administered through the Office of Facilities Management and Development. This program is intended to support community providers in the expansion of community-based health services. The concentration of new funding in fiscal 2025 is based on the applicants submitted by qualified applicants. MDH does not foresee any barrier to further increasing project administration load. In response to the brief committee that MDH should brief the committee on the department's plans to update the facilities master plan. In September 2021, as you know, the Maryland Department of Health issued a 2041 facilities master plan, a 20-year plan to align MDH's projected patient care needs with the healthcare services offered or provided by MDH. Throughout the implementation, MDH will progressively transform healthcare delivery with improving the quality of care and reducing costs. One of the objectives of the plan was to drive the MDH capital budget submissions. In coordination with DGS, MDH will work to update this plan, and MDH will also hold work groups with various stakeholders to ensure the plan aligns with the needs of the state. In response to should MDH comment on whether the plan to transition care to community health providers is still a priority. MDH is in the beginning stages of the process to update the facilities master plan. Through the process, MDH will engage various stakeholders, including state employees and home community-based service providers. To date, no assessment of capacity of the home community-based services providers has been conducted. I want to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Smith and the entire DLS team, and we are here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Quarterman.
Mr. Chair, regards to the facilities master timeline here on the back, a couple of things, Secretary, you and I have talked about already, and I can see some things got moved around here. For example, the 4 24-hour crisis centers has just moved down to a different section of the now, so that's still kind of being talked about. The Western Maryland Hospital in Deerhead, that was in the then section, but I don't see anything in the now section. I just want to know if you could understand you guys just came on board and you're assessing everything like that, but can you give a rough idea of when you're going to be looking at those type of transitions or what the thought process behind there of going forward of what that may look like?
You can start that and hand it off. Yeah. I can start it and hand it.
Sure.
So as you may or may not know, we sent out an REOI, which is of interest in that facility. We did not get any viable interest in that facility at this time, so we are reevaluating the whole facility and
in the facility is in the current building, or you're talking
the building.
yeah, well, the building's
and
the
the services,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's the problem.
And
Yeah.
the services there,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
So, the REOI was for the services,
Right.
not for the
Correct.
building. Okay.
Correct.
So we are reevaluating that right now.
Okay. So you anticipate putting another ROI out? Is that, or you're just still kind of back to the drawing board, so to speak?
So potentially, but the big thing in that facility is the traumatic brain injury. That is the place where people with TBI go. And so since no one bid on the services, we're reevaluating what that would look like and where those services could be provided elsewhere before we think about the brick and mortar.
Sure. Maybe we continue the conversation offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary and your team. Really appreciate it. I'm just doing a check to see if Denise is here. Denise Gilmore. It's here, but okay, great. Colleagues, we're now moving to Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services with Jacob Kesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jacob Cash. I'll be going over the DPSCS capital budget. The fiscal 2023, or sorry, the 2023 CIP includes 11 projects totaling just over $1 billion. Of this total, 43 million is being funded in 2024 and supports 3 ongoing projects. Of note is the Therapeutic Treatment Center Phase 1, which receives 12.6 million in planning funds to continue the design phase, which commenced in January of 2023. If you join me on page 2, you can see the summary of the capital funding projected by year. Most of the anticipated costs are in the out years and increase substantially as the Therapeutic Treatment Center is anticipated to begin construction. Moving on to a brief discussion of the inmate population, beginning on page 4, Exhibit 1 shows the number of offenders under DPSCS custody over the past decade. Since fiscal 2013, the number of arrestees processed declined 74%. The average detainee population declined 24%, and the incarcerated population decreased 31%. So far in fiscal 2023, there has been a slight increase in the inmate population, but bed space capacity is mostly a concern in the Baltimore City pretrial complex rather than in the prison system writ large for the state. I will also note that for Baltimore City last year, all of those detainees that were being held outside of Baltimore City in Jessup have been returned to the city. And so this is the first year that Baltimore City capacity is reflective of all of those detainees. Exhibit 4 on page 6 breaks down the overall $1 billion capital plan into the categories. The plan overwhelmingly supports new specialty housing units and security improvements to facilities. The most expensive projects are the Therapeutic Treatment Center at $503 million, the 160-bed Jessup Regional Infirmary at $164 million, and the ECI High Temperature Distribution Project at $71 million. Costs for all projects for DPSCS increased on average by 16%. Mostly due to higher cost escalations in the out years and the disruption of the construction economy, which increased materials. Every project is listed here, and I will begin the summary of these projects. Begin with the Therapeutic Treatment Center on page 8. This is the planned replacement for the Baltimore City Detention Center, which was demolished by the state after its closure in fiscal 2015 due to abhorrent conditions. The facility issues are in relation to the Duval v. Hogan settlement agreement, which is the modern version of an existing consent decree from the U.S. Department of Justice to improve the local jailing in Baltimore City. DPSCS is still out of compliance with the agreement, and this project is part of that solution to bring the department into alignment with the federal law. The planned facility will consolidate therapeutic substance use disorder treatment, mental health treatment, and medical treatment. The overall project is the most expensive state-owned project ever considered by the state, because with phase 1 and phase 2, this will approximately cost $1 billion. The facility would also incur large operating expenses as it is opened to detainees, and it's expected that a private contractor will be providing the medical, mental health, and deflection services. Phase 1 of the TTC project is underway and received $12.6 million in general obligation bond funding in fiscal 2024 to continue the design phase, which started in January 2023. Construction is tentatively scheduled for December of 2024, and there are 2 contracts in place for planning. In April of 2022, the Board of Public Works approved a $16 million contract with CGL companies for design and construction management services. And in October of 2022, the BPW approved a $34 million contract with STV Incorporated for design services, and specifically for a schematic design. Exhibit 8 summarizes the project changes since this was last approved. The project will no longer include a renovation of 300 beds in the jail industries building because those were no longer considered to be able to be renovated to code. That was initially meant to be a cost savings measure, so we're anticipating an associated cost increase with that scope change. Due to the overall delays and accelerated escalation costs, total amount of funds needed for this project increased 8% from $465 million to an estimated $503 million by the end of fiscal 2029. Additionally, with design set to begin, or actually with design actually have begun, and there have been a number of rescopings since the program plan was approved, it's important that the information provided be up to date and accurate. But there were several discrepancies in the 2023 CIP where there were inaccuracies of what this project actually entails. So that is something that in future CIPs we're looking for more up-to-date information and accuracy for this project. It is one of the most costly and transformative construction projects ever considered. And so it's important not only to have those operational or to have those program plans set up and the scope ironed out, but to have operational plans in place for when this facility inevitably opens. Next, I'd like to move to the steam tunnel and perimeter security project at ECI. ECI is situated in a sandy and moist land, and there is an increased amount of weathering for underground infrastructure. They have seen this for a few of their systems, including the perimeter system and the steam tunnels. They have been impacted by emergency shutdowns of this hot water treatment system or of this hot water distribution system, and that impacted the hot water provided to inmates to sanitary and dietary purposes. The project changes are summarized in Exhibit 6. The 2020 CIP included the project at the 95% construction documents, but it was over budget, and so they were directed to undergo value engineering. However, because of the project delay associated with value engineering, they lost value and the costs increased. In the 2022 CIP, those cost estimates were $60 million compared to about $37 million. And that mostly involves the increase of material costs as well as increased site work. The final project, in the 2023 CIP, costs again increased by about 12%, and the project is needing an additional unanticipated year of funding. This project has been in the final year of funding for 4 years. Final project that I'll talk about today is the Jessup Region Electrical Infrastructure Upgrade. This serves more than 120 buildings and approximately 4,500 inmates and 1,600 state employees. There have been 2 total blackouts of the entire region, which lasted for 3 days each, and it forced the facilities to depend on emergency generators. The generators do not support all facility functions, and that presents a safety and a security risk. Both outages were due to pole failures and the disruption of the overhead lines on site. And there have been dozens of local facility failures of breakers and transformers that have aged out. Estimated costs due to electrical failures since 2016 are approximately $1.7 million. Delays on this project have continued for 3 consecutive years. And while design was initially completed in November 2021 and funding has been in place, construction only began in July 2022. And the award was approved, and that was after the award was approved by the BPW in May of 2022. The project now stands at $32 million, which is a year-to-year increase of 32%. And the primary justification is the increase of underground utility work, delays due to reworked specifications of the project, and increasing metal costs. Finally, I'd like to speak on an issue. This one issue begins on page 17, and this is, the legislature has made a priority of building a new women's pre-release center in Baltimore City, and that establishing legislation required DPSCS to identify a location, acquire property, and design a site plan for the pre-release unit for women on or before November 1st, 2021, begin construction or renovation by February 2022, and begin operating by November of 2023. So while DPSCS has been working with the necessary partners to establish this project, the department has not met the ambitious standards, and the project is delayed compared to these statutory requirements. DPSCS and DGS submitted the program part 1 and 2 to DBM on December 16th, 2022. They have made progress as well towards acquiring a location. The proposed site is currently 1624 Utah Place in Baltimore City, and it's owned by Baltimore City and currently has a school on the property location. And it would be about half a mile from a metro stop. The second and third provisions of this statute are not anticipated to be met until March 2025 and March 2027 at the earliest. The current cost estimate is preliminary, but indicates that the 64-bed facility would require approximately $87 million in total funding. The legislature did include a pre-authorization of $2.4 million in fiscal 2024. Of $2 million in fiscal 2024. However, no funding is currently in this budget. DPSCS indicated that funding for the project was mistakenly left out of the department's request due to confusion over the pre-authorization process and lack of an approved program part 1 and 2. The department intended to encumber funds that were pre-authorized once the design contract was in place, but since the budget is introduced, does not include funding for this project, that is not available. In summary, for the DPSCS capital program, DLS recommends to approve the general obligation bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Cash, for the comprehensive report. Seeing no questions at this time, we'll bring up the agency. Madam Secretary and your team.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray, members of the Capital Budget Committee, and if I may say, it is unusual to see you. Senator Alfred's not sitting in the chair position, but glad to see you today. My name is Carolyn Scruggs. I am the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today are Annie Harvey, the Acting Deputy Secretary of Operations, Mr. John Gauthier, Director of Capital Construction, and Mr. James Dunkerson, the Deputy Director of Capital Construction. The department appreciates Mr. Cash and his thorough review. Thank you for your hard work and your thoughtful analysis. The analysis contains one issue and one recommended action. The department concurs with the recommended action. Regarding the issue, I've been asked to respond to security upgrades at the Maryland Correctional Institute, Hagerstown, and the Roxbury Correctional Institution also in Hagerstown. The scope of each project has not changed. A review of the projects by both this agency and the Department of General Services identified the need for the adjustment to the project costs to more accurately reflect the current environment. Simply stated, labor, construction, and other costs have increased from what they originally were estimated at. Although I was not asked to comment on this, I would like to address the Women's Pre-Release Center funding. As you know, I was appointed to this position January of this year and confirmed this session. When the FY 2024 budget was published, I was quickly inundated with phone calls about the lack of funding in the budget for the Women's Pre-Release Center. This was an oversight, and the department has submitted a request for the pre-authorized funds to be added to the FY 24 budget. As stated in the analysis, the department and DJS have submitted the program Part 1 and Part 2 to the Department of Budget and Management as of December 16th, 2022. The project remains in Part 1 and Part 2, and a detailed accounting of the status of the project was provided in the Joint Chairman's report that was submitted to DJS in conjunction with the department in January of this year. As stated previously, the department concurs with the recommended action, and we're here to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Seeing no questions, colleagues, we do have a number of folks that want to give public testimony on this specific agency report. We're going to bring them up and we'll just ask the public to keep it limited to 2 minutes. The first one is Olu from AFSCME Local 1678. I'll move to Denise Gilmore from AFSCME Maryland. I'll go to Elizabeth Starnes from No Struggle, No Succeeds. Floor is yours, Ms. Starnes.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman McCray and members of the Senate Capital Budget Subcommittee. My name is Elizabeth Starnes, and I'm here to request full funding for the Women's Pre-Release Center. I was incarcerated for 11 years and 7 months, and I'm still not free. The system is designed and implemented in a way that does not center our needs nor our success. This is not new, and this is known. I participated in work release for 14 months before being told this was to prepare me for society. I was taught nothing. I was dehumanized with twice daily strip searches just to go to work. I was given no learning tools for reentry, not even the knowledge of public transportation. I was bused to work on a prison van that doesn't quite seem normal, does it? I had to pay $5 each way for a 1.4-mile drive. There were 5 other women being transported to the same location. To the extent the state profited $300 weekly for less than 15 miles of travel per week. Where was my pre-release center I was paying for? Additionally, DPSCS took 33% of my income each pay to cover the cost of room and board. Why did my security level change the worth of my cell? Why am I paying money for a program that is supposed to be for a center to prepare me for release? The dehumanization is overwhelming. Incarceration, that was a cakewalk compared to the mental hell I still endure every day with PTSD from being dumped literally from a prison cell to a sink or swim oppressive system. How am I supposed to thrive? How did I have not the support? Had I had a full service reentry supported center, I may not have felt hopeless when I didn't even know how to buy groceries. Why not support and care for us instead of the policies to oppress and mass supervise us? I did my time. Why am I not free? Where's my support? I ask, where's my support? And this issue is not about me. It's not just about me. I'm one of thousands in this state who are not free because we are denied at every turn of housing, employment, nourishment, health, access to technology, and political, social, and civil inclusion. May I please just finish my thought? Thank you. I stand here in solidarity and in the community of the scores of African-American, Latina, and Indigenous women who experience the compounded impact of a failing system because of their race, ethnicity, and gender. Their stories are equally important, need to be elevated. I'm not the beginning nor the middle, and if we don't make change, I won't be the end. Thank you, sir.
Tony.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll follow up with
From Jews United for Justice, JUFJ.
Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time. My name is Matan Zemmer. I'm a Maryland community organizer with Jews United for Justice. We organize 6,000 Jews and allies across the state, and we're a member of the Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition. This is definitely not the first time I've been before this committee and others to talk about women's pre-release, and I'm certain it won't be the last. There are a couple things I just want to focus in on. We've been in this coalition for several years now. I actually personally had the privilege of working on this issue when I was working in Senator Mary Washington's office when this bill originally passed. So it's been quite a journey. As you all heard, there's the $2 million pre-authorized that did not get into the budget for this year. We understand and we appreciate that that was an error that's being corrected. The issue that I want to highlight is in conversations this year during this legislative session, we've heard from DGS representatives and others that the estimated cost for the next phase of implementation is actually closer to $5 million. We haven't been able to get concrete numbers on that, but we're concerned that if we only move forward with the 2.4 that's indicated in the report, that we're going to face budget obstacles because it's not matching what DGS is indicating they actually need for this next phase. So that's more of a request that we figure out what the number is from DGS that they need to move this forward. Is that 2.4 still accurate? If not, how do we get to the full amount needed for this next phase? The other piece is just, as I said, we've been coming before these committees, fighting for this funding year after year. We would love to get to a place where we just see that fully funded in the capital budget, that we can move forward. We don't have to come back year and year again to fight for basic funding to get this thing from one stage to the next. And the delays are well documented in Mr. Cash's report. I won't reiterate them, but our frustrations around these delays are underscored by the fact that DPSCS has never once requested funding for this project, despite being required by law. So we're, encouraged to hear a change in the tune recently. We appreciate the comments from the secretary. Look forward to seeing those acted upon. But we still haven't seen an updated CIP, which has been promised. So we're concerned about that. And just generally, it's beyond time to move this forward, as I think we share that with many of you all. And incarcerated women have already waited for more than 13 years without these services. So we will continue to advocate. We appreciate your partnership and your time. And I'll leave it there. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll bring up Psalms Rojas from Marion House.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray, members of the Senate Capital Budget Committee. My name is Psalms Rojas. I am speaking to you on behalf of Marion House and as a member of the Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition. As an organization, Marion House was founded over 40 years ago to meet the needs of women exiting incarceration. And the women who founded Marion House were working within the jails and prisons and realizing that women were not equipped to face the challenges they would come across once they exited incarceration, with many returning to prison. And so they opened Marion House to be a safe place where women can receive the support they need to re-enter society successfully. While we serve women who are not just coming from incarceration on any given year, anywhere from 50 to 85% of the women we serve still come to us directly from jail or prison. In our years of serving this vulnerable population, we've seen that comprehensive trauma-informed, person-centered services that address employment, education, housing, mental health, recovery, family reunification, and more help prepare women exiting incarceration for successful reintegration. It's our privilege to be a part of these women's stories, and we will continue to serve them. But the reality is that every woman experiencing incarceration deserves this support and these services, not just the ones who get into Marion House. They need a community-based standalone pre-release unit that provides integrated services that will give them a strong foundation for re-entry. When we conducted a longitudinal study of Maryland employment patterns and those who complete our program, we saw that women who go through the program have a higher likelihood of appearing on wage records and achieving earnings almost twice as much as those who don't receive this support. In addition, only 11% of those who receive support reoffended, a stark difference versus the Maryland recidivism rate of 40%. We know that comprehensive services that address specific needs that women exiting incarceration face will help empower them to build stable and successful lives. And when women flourish, happy Women's History Month, by the way, communities flourish because research shows that when we invest in women, they turn it around and invest it on people surrounding them. We're asking for your full investment to ensure that women receive equitable services. They've waited too long, and every day longer is a disservice to them and a disservice to our communities. Senator McCray, you might remember visiting our facilities, and thank you for that. I want to extend that invitation to the whole committee so that you can see what these services do for the women that we serve and how receiving these services while they are incarcerated can help them re-enter society. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the things that you do each and every day of the 365. But most importantly, I really enjoyed the visit at that location, Marion House. At this time, we'll bring up Beth Tomasello from the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club.
Thank you, Chair Zucker, Vice Chair McCray, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Beth Tomasello, past president of the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club, a member of the Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition. Whether and when DPSCS builds the Women Pre-Release Center is not a choice, it's the law. The Gender Responsive Pre-Release Act, enacted over the governor's veto in 2021, established timelines for reporting, construction, and operation of the Women's Pre-Release Center, none of which DPSCS has met. DPSCS waited 7 months after the veto override before requesting a DGS project manager, and only after the General Assembly forced the department to accept $150,000 in operating funds did DPSCS hire a planning consultant whose report was due in December. The department now states that it needs 18 months to accept this planning report. By then, nearly 3.5 years will have elapsed since the veto override without a shovel going in the ground. To place this in context, it only took DPSCS 2 years to plan and construct phase 2 of Dorsey Run Correctional Facility, a 560 bed, 80,000 square foot prison. Women cannot wait until 2027 for a pre-release facility and services. Too often, this department spends taxpayer money on carceral practices with proven negative outcomes, including, as Sams mentioned, a 40.5% recidivism rate. In 2021, the General Assembly rightly mandated that the department implement a data-driven, proven program which will reduce recidivism, create better outcomes for returning women and their children, and will save taxpayers money. Community-based pre-release programs save $13,000 a year per woman over incarceration. And for every dollar spent on community-based pre-release services, the state will save over 5 times that much in long-term costs. Although DPSCS requested no FY24 funding for the Women's Pre-Release Center, it did request current or future funding for 11 other non-mandated capital projects, 10 of which will have no bearing on carceral outcomes. The department's priorities are clear, and they do not include complying with the law. WDC respectfully requests that this committee fully fund the Women's Pre-Release Center for FY 2024 and require a capital plan for the completion of the facility. It is time for DPSCS to comply with the law and provide returning women with the services they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Committee will now go to Nicole Hansen Mandel. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Hansen Mundell. I am the Executive Director of Out for Justice and one of the co-leads of the Women's Pre-Release Equity Coalition. I am here to talk about why we can't continue to afford not ensuring that this pre-release thing happens, right? The department talked about, Mr. Cash reported $5 billion, $1 billion, all these millions of dollars on these other projects. And what I want to highlight really quickly is the numerous negative impacts of poverty and incarcerating mothers. Incarcerating mothers and not preparing them for successful reentry harms our children, increased risk of living in poverty more than men, increased behavioral problems, reduced educational attainment for our children. Child poverty costs the U.S. economy $500 billion a year. The shocking cost of foster care due to incarcerating mothers. 10% of incarcerated mothers have children in the state custody and foster care. According to the Bureau of Justice, incarcerated moms are 5 times more likely to have their children placed in foster care than incarcerated dads. The average annual cost per child is at least $25,000, $782. An estimated 220 plus Maryland children are currently in foster care because their mother is incarcerated. And that was data from 2020. Maryland is spending an estimated $5.6 million per year to place children of women at MCIW's children in foster care. Again, $5.6 million you all are spending every year on children who need their mothers and don't have their mothers because we don't have a women's pre-release facility. These numbers are much more higher if you consider moms of children in pretrial and local jails, increase in annual costs of foster care since 2011. Is my time up? I'll just wrap up. So we could talk about the cost of doing this. And I know, some of us have said that they are giving us big numbers, 87 million. But I just gave you research, backed up research that talks about when we don't do this, this is the cost.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't see any questions. We'll now move on to, we have just a few more witnesses. Elizabeth Starnes. She already spoke. Okay. Jason Billingsley. All right. Is there anyone that was signed up to testify that has yet to come up? All right. That concludes the briefing on that budget. We'll now move on to Department of Aging. Naomi Kimura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Naomi Camaro. I'm going to be presenting the 2024 capital budget for the Department of Aging. The Department of Aging operates the Senior Citizen Activities Centers Capital Grant Program and issues grants to local jurisdictions to renovate and build senior centers across the state. These grants can fund up to 50% of the total project costs and be in the amounts of up to $800,000. Exhibit 2 on page 4 shows the concentration of individuals ages 60 and over in the state by census tract, as well as the location of existing senior centers. The fiscal 2024 request totals $1.865 million and includes 3 projects: a replacement of the Jacksonville Senior Center in Baltimore County, a replacement of the East Columbia 50 and over Senior Center in Howard County, and a roof replacement for the Kent Island Senior Center. Additional information on ongoing projects that were previously authorized can be found in Exhibit 3 and Appendix 1 of the analysis. And I'll just conclude with DLS's recommendation to approve the general obligation bond funds of $1.865 million for the Department of Aging grant program. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. I don't see any questions on that. Call up the administration. Welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee. We wanted to, first, my name is Pamela Seidel. I'm Chief of Staff of the Maryland Department of Aging, and to my right is Deputy Secretary Bernice Hutchinson. We would first like to thank Ms. Camaro for her thoughtful analysis of our program and her insight that she has shared with us regarding our projects. At this point, we obviously concur with the analysis and are open and available for any questions.
Thank you very much for that response. Any questions from the committee? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Committee will now turn to the University of Maryland Medical System. Ann Wagner. We might have someone signed up for public testimony. Hold on for 1 second. Is Jean Hugh here? Okay. Good to see you. Thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If it's all right, I'll go ahead with the capital analysis for the University of Maryland Medical System. So the fiscal 24 capital budget provides $36.5 million in general obligation bonds for the University of Maryland Medical System projects across 2 projects. So first, I will provide a quick update on the Comprehensive Cancer Center project. Last year's operating and capital budgets provided the total state contribution planned in the CIP 3 years earlier than anticipated. And so that brought the total state contribution to $125 million, while previous budget language expressed the General Assembly's intent that the state contribution total $175 million. But this year's CIP does not plan for any more state funding for this project. Moving on to the Oncology Center project at the Capital Region Medical Center, the capital budget includes $27 million in GO bonds, which is the amount that was pre-authorized last year for fiscal 24. This amount also completes the total state contribution planned in the CIP. As the analysis notes, this reflects a state share of almost 85% of estimated total project costs. The second project funded in this year's capital budget is phase 3 of the renovation at the R. Adams Cowley Shock Trauma Center. Due to recent increases in construction costs, decided to defer some components of this project. So is asked to provide cost estimates for the deferred components, explain the impact on the shock trauma center operations, and provide an updated timeline for completing the deferred components. The capital budget provides $9.5 million in GO bonds for this project. This exhibit is showing that accelerates about $3 million that was planned for fiscal 25 in last year's CIP. And this funding would also complete the state's total planned contribution of $20 million for this project. Going back up to DLS's recommended actions, DLS recommends approving the GEO bond authorizations for both projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fantastic analysis. I don't see any questions. I'll call up the medical system. Welcome. No, it's been a long day. We appreciate your all patience.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. For the record, my name is Kristen Jones-Bryce, and I am the Chief External Affairs Officer for the University of Maryland Medical System. With me today are two of our system's hospital leaders. Nat Richardson is the President and CEO of the University of Maryland Capital Region Health. Bert O'Malley is the President and CEO of the University of Maryland Medical Center. Before I defer to Dr. O'Malley and Mr. Richardson, I'd like to take just a few minutes to answer a couple of questions raised by the analysts and also to provide some thank yous. At first, I want to express the medical system's appreciation to this subcommittee for their ongoing support of these two critical projects, and would like to thank the governor for the inclusion of funding in his FY24 capital budget. We think these projects are emblematic of the very close partnership that University of Maryland Medical System enjoys with the state. I also want to thank Ann Wagner at DLS for all of the work she puts in, for her very cogent analyses. And I want to likewise express my thanks to our DBM analyst, Paul Rader, who is surviving his first session, I think, and does the same on the executive branch side. The University of Maryland Medical System agrees with Ms. Wagner's recommendations, and more importantly, we hope the subcommittee agrees with Ms. Wagner's recommendations, that we approve, that the committee approves the remaining $9.5 million of the state's commitment to shock trauma phase 3 renovations and $27 million in state funding that also completes the state's commitment to building a state-of-the-art cancer center, now the Center for Advanced Medicine in Largo, that will provide comprehensive cancer care to Prince George's County in the Southern Maryland region. Again, in the analysis, there is one question, there's one concern. I will do it very quickly, Mr. Chairman. Capital Region Cancer Project DLS has made note of the state's commitment to the project and also the possibility that the project could come in under budget. We would be more than happy if that happened. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, unfortunately. Having said that, the team at Cap Region has regular meetings with the contractor and stays on top of this project from a timing perspective and a cash flow perspective. At this time, the center is on time, scheduled to open in the spring of 2024, so this time next year, and projected to come in just over budget. On shock trauma phase 3, Ms. Wagner has asked a question about whether the deferral of two components of that project will impact the operation of shock trauma. Renovations to the 4th floor orthopedic unit and upgrades to the hyperbaric chamber have been delayed as a result of construction increases and the need to phase other elements of the program ahead of these. Unfortunately, I think the short answer is that not completing these elements of the project doesn't impact the operation of shock trauma. But I want to assure the committee that these remain high priority projects for the system, and they will be incorporated into the next phase of shock trauma renewal. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and the committee for your time and consideration, and at your discretion, I will turn to Dr. O'Malley and Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, please, anything you want to add. We appreciate you all being here, and we certainly are knowledgeable about the projects, and we'll do everything we can to protect it.
So I'll be brief. I appreciate that. Chair Zucker, Vice Chair McCray, and members of the committee. I'm Bert O'Malley. As Kristen mentioned, I'm the President and CEO of the Medical Center and a very proud member of the School of Medicine and active head and neck cancer surgeon. Shock trauma, an incredible resource. We know that. It's an unbelievable facility. It's a treasure for the state. It is the cornerstone of the Maryland Emergency Medical Services Program. It's unique in the nation with its PARC designation, the Primary Adult Resource Center. in the level of complexity of care it provides in multi-complex trauma, head trauma, spinal cord injury, 24/7 services. This is something that doesn't exist in the United States of America, and it's right here in the state of Maryland. So I'm proud to be a leader within this institution and a member of the faculty, and we're advocating for the renewal for the trauma resuscitation unit, the blood lab, pathology, to continue to provide state-of-the-art facilities for this unique care. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, co-chairman, and members of the committee. I'm Nat Richardson, the president and CEO of Capital Region Medical Center. I've been there 2.5 years and really trying our best to get it right in Prince George's County. And when I say that, I mean, we don't want to come to this committee and ask for dollars that in a few years, you don't feel like those dollars have done the things that they've said. I have personally read all of the health reports in Prince George's County. And as you know, cancer is the second leading cause of death and disease in Prince George's County. And we need to do something about that. We need to solve for it. And this cancer center, for the remaining $27 million, I know you will be extremely proud, as I am, to see the center that's being developed right now and the work that it will do in the county. It's an all-inclusive center. We went out and looked at MD Anderson sites in the Houston areas, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and other cancer centers across the nation to make sure that we got it right. This center will be one where a patient can come and get all of their care in one location. Typically with cancer, they would have to go to one place for radiation, typically another place for infusions and imaging studies. They'll come, all of the care will be centered around the patient. They'll go into one room, they'll receive their care in that building. And we're very proud of the work that will be done next spring once we open. So we just ask for your support, and thank you for all of the support you have given Capital Region thus far. And we look forward to making this project one that the community and this committee, as well as others who have supported the funding, are proud of the work that we're going to do in Prince George's County.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing to make our state that much better. I appreciate your time and appreciate everything that you all are doing. I don't see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee will now turn our attention to the Maryland Hospital Association. Ann Wagner. Ms. Wagner, you're batting cleanup right now, so I know you're going to hit a home run like you always do.
Thank you very much for that.
Of course. Start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you said, I'm presenting the capital analysis for the Maryland Hospital Association. The capital budget provides $8.1 million in GO bonds for the private hospital grant program, which is administered by MHA. This is about $1 million more than planned in last year's CIP due to increased demand for this program and higher construction costs. I'll also note that the latest CIP plans for this program to increase to $10 million distributed each year in fiscal 27 and 28. So under this program, private hospitals can apply for capital grants for projects that improve patient care. Exhibit 1 summarizes the 9 projects selected for fiscal 24 grant funding, and I'll highlight that more than half of the projects are focused on expanding behavioral health services, specifically renovating treatment areas in emergency departments, as multiple grantees have described increasing numbers of patients needing emergency behavioral health services. I'll jump ahead to the issue section. The first item discusses MHA's grant selection process and highlights that approximately 11 projects supporting private hospitals were funded in last year's capital budget outside of the private hospital grant program. And therefore, they wouldn't have received the same evaluation as grants funded through the private hospital grant program. The second issue discusses MHA's oversight of ongoing hospital projects. The capital budget includes an amendment to a prior authorization, which would extend the grant term for a project at the Garrett County Memorial Hospital. But MHA later indicated an additional project at the Shady Grove Medical Center would also need a grant term extension. But that project did not receive or is not included for amendment in the capital budget as introduced. And so MHA is asked to explain why that amendment is needed and why it wasn't included in the bill as introduced. And also why it wasn't highlighted in the annual encumbrance report that MHA provides to the budget committees. Other than that, DLS is recommending the approval of the $8.1 million in GO bonds for this program and for the change to the Garrett County Memorial Hospital prior authorization. But with that, I'll conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wagner. We would like to hear those answers to those questions. So thank you very much. We'll call up the Maryland Hospital Association to help answer those. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Senator Chair Zucker, Vice Chair McCray, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Jane Krinke. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Hospital Association and our 60-member hospitals and health systems. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to testify in support of the 9 hospital projects recommended for FY24 capital funding. First, I'd like to thank our great analysts, Ms. Wagner and Ms. Godwin. They've been incredibly helpful to us, especially through the amendment process. So this year, 10 hospitals submitted applications requesting a combined $9.5 million. The Hospital Bond Project Review Committee recommended all 10 for a total funding request of $7 million. We are extremely appreciative of the governor's generous increase in funding for 9 of the projects at a total of $8.1 million. We also appreciate the increase in out-year funding. This will allow us to continue to expand the program. All of the projects align with the goals of the total cost of care model, and they're focused on innovation. So we're very excited. We were disappointed that funding for Emeritus Health was not included in the final recommendations. So we are requesting 2 amendments, as Ms. Wagner noted. The first was included in the capital budget already, the Garrett County Memorial Hospital FY 2018 project. So this grant was identified through our annual review process, and it's only a request for an extension just because of the supply chain issues that have gone on throughout the pandemic. We've seen lots of trends and hospitals just needing a little extra time, and they're waiting on parts of materials that are stuck in the supply chain. They are anticipated to continue moving the project forward. We are respectfully requesting an amendment for Adventist Healthcare's 2016 grant for the Shady Grove Medical Center. And that's just to extend the match certification date and the grant term extension. When we submitted the report on October 1st of 2022, this grant wasn't identified as having any problems. They were anticipating completing the project by June. However, due to some supply chain issues as well and things outside of their control, they asked for an extension. So we are requesting to move the match certification date to June 1, 2024, and then the term of the grant to June 1, 2025, just so we don't have to come back to ask for any other extensions for this grant. So to be on the safe side. Oh.
Sorry.
Yep.
So I'm just, the Shady Grove thing is, I'm just trying to understand.
Sure.
Did they apply late? Is that what the problem was?
No, this is for a 2016 grant. So
okay,
an old grant, and every year we reach out to everyone with an active grant and just check on the status and ask if they need an extension or amendment. And at that time they said no. And then a few months later, they said yes.
well, because I'm understanding that they're like $8 million over budget. So that's what I was just trying to find out what the status is with them right now.
I can find out more details. I don't know the specific details
Okay.
of the project.
I just appreciate it. It's in my area and I'm a big supporter of theirs, but trying to help them out a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And just to address some of the questions that Ms. Wagner raised regarding the projects funded outside of the program. So you'll notice that those 11 projects are usually very large or they're routine maintenance projects. And because of our limited funding for the program, we try to ensure that projects that recommended by the committee are innovative. They align with the total cost of care model. They're focused on direct patient care services, which some of those projects in the capital budget were like routine maintenance, like updating windows and things like that, that would not score well in our program. And so part of what's driving this is the lack of access to capital funding that hospitals have through the rate setting structure. And until that's really addressed at the state level, hospitals will be going outside of our program. That's kind of the reality that we're in. And we're not so much the gatekeeper for all of these capital projects. But we do try to be aware and make sure our members know that we are the first stop. If it doesn't make sense, then we can work with them on other avenues. And this will continue to increase. We've seen increased demand for the program over the years, and we appreciate your support and increased funding. So with that, we ask for a favorable, I guess, support for these projects. And thank you for your time.
Great. Any questions from the committee? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I think that, and well, that does end today's capital budget hearings. Really appreciate everybody's hanging in there and done important stuff today. So we're adjourned.